I'd been waiting for weeks to try ice fishing on Silent Waters Lake. It wasn't on any map, but a local from the nearby town had mentioned it to me while I was grabbing supplies. The way he described it, with its untouched beauty and promise of trophy-worthy fish, made it irresistible. He did mention something odd, though. As I handed him my cash, he paused and said, "Just don't linger there after dark." He didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. I figured it was one of those small-town quirks where people like to tell ghost stories to outsiders. I finally made the trip one crisp February morning. The trail up the mountain was narrow and treacherous, but the sight that greeted me at the lake made it all worth it. Silent Waters stretched before me, a pristine sheet of ice, bordered by tall, snow-covered pines. The stillness was profound. No cars, no birds, no wind. Just silence. Setting up was easy enough. I found a good spot near the center of the lake, drilled my first hole, and settled in with my gear. The ice was thick, at least a foot deep, and the water below shimmered with clarity. Hours passed, but I didn't mind the lack of bites. The isolation was oddly comforting. As the afternoon waned, I started noticing strange little details I'd overlooked earlier. For one, there were no animal tracks near the lake. Not even a bird had crossed the snow. Then there was the faint noise, almost like a low tapping, coming from somewhere far out on the ice. I figured it was just the ice shifting in the cold, but it felt too rhythmic, too deliberate. The first real jolt of unease came when I reeled up my line after what felt like a nibble. It wasn't a fish I'd hooked, but an old boot, worn and waterlogged. The initials HT were etched faintly into the leather, barely visible. I laughed it off, thinking it was just debris someone lost years ago, but the humor didn't stick. The boot felt wrong in a way I couldn't quite explain. I tossed it aside, determined to catch at least one fish before heading back, but the uneasiness lingered, gnawing at the edges of my mind as the light began to fade. The evening crept in faster than I'd expected. The sun dipped behind the mountains, leaving the lake bathed in cold twilight. I wanted to leave, I really did, but something kept me there. Call it stubbornness, or maybe just the faint hope of landing a decent catch, but I stayed, even as the temperature dropped and the shadows lengthened. It wasn't long before the unease I'd felt earlier began to escalate. I noticed faint hairline cracks forming in the ice around my hole. At first, I brushed it off as the natural stress of the freezing cold, but the cracks weren't random. They were almost purposeful. Lines extended outward in a jagged pattern that seemed to pulse slightly, as if reacting to my presence. That rhythmic tapping from earlier returned, louder this time. It echoed beneath the ice, steady and deliberate, like someone drumming their fingers in thought. My breath misted in the cold as I leaned over the hole, shining my flashlight into the dark water below. At first, there was nothing but rippling reflections. Then I saw it, a shadow moving. Not a fish, not debris, but something larger, gliding smoothly beneath the surface. My flashlight flickered and the shadow disappeared. I straightened up, heart pounding. I told myself it must have been an optical illusion, a trick of the light on the water. But then I noticed something that stopped me cold. Footprints. Barefoot, human-sized prints trailing across the snow, leading toward me from the far edge of the lake. I hadn't heard anyone approach. The tracks were fresh, pressed deep into the snow, and stopped abruptly near my fishing hole. Yet there was no one there. My nerves were fraying. I started packing my gear as fast as I could, every fiber of my being screaming at me to leave. As I loaded my tackle box, I froze. Across the lake, standing in the faint twilight, was a figure. They were wrapped in dark clothing and unmoving, staring directly at me. My flashlight beam swept across them, but they didn't flinch. I couldn't make out any details of their face. It was obscured beneath a hood or a hat. My knees locked, my breath caught in my throat. Then, slowly, they took a single step forward. I I grabbed my backpack and bolted without looking back. The icy air burned my lungs as I sprinted toward the shoreline. My boots skidded on the slick surface of the lake, and for one horrifying moment, I thought I was going to fall. But somehow, I made it back to solid ground. The forest loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, but it felt safer than the open ice. The footsteps, the ones I'd seen in the snow, they were nowhere to be found once I reached the edge of the lake. It was as if the tracks had evaporated into thin air. I didn't stop to make sense of it. I kept running, heart pounding, until I reached the trailhead and saw my car. Relief washed over me as I fumbled for the keys with trembling hands. But as I opened the car door, something caught my eye. It was the boot, the one I'd pulled out of the ice earlier. It was standing upright, perfectly positioned in the center of the trail leading to my car. My stomach lurched. There was no way I'd carried it with me. I didn't stick around to think about it. Jumping into the car, I started the engine and floored it. The trail was narrow and slippery, but I didn't care. All I wanted was to put as much distance between myself and that lake as possible. My headlights swept across the woods as I sped down the road, and for a moment, I thought I saw movement. Something dark and human-shaped, slipping between the trees. But when I looked again, it was gone. To this day, I don't know what I encountered on Silent Waters Lake. The footprints, the shadow under the ice, the figure. It all feels like a fragmented nightmare, a memory I can't fully piece together. I've never been back, and I never will. Whatever's out there, it can keep its lake. I won't risk becoming part of its story.